Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to a special episode of Dr. Movie. Uh, my good friend Dan Bone is with me from Podcast On Hauted Hill, and you hear me say it all the time. Matter of fact, I had already recorded an episode for this movie that he requested, but I thought, what better way to talk about this than to just have him come on the show and just do something special together. So, Dan, what's up, buddy?
Hey, how you doing? It's amazing to speak with you again, Rick. I've missed talking to you and talking movies with you.
Yeah, and that's the bad part of doing a solo show is you kind of miss that interaction. So, I thought, why not? This may be something we try to do regularly, and I couldn't think of a better person to start with, and what a movie to start with, too. So this is going to be a whole bunch of fun. And again, if you don't know who Dan is, if you're listening to my show at all, then you need to turn this off. Well, not because of Dan, but you need to turn this off and go listen to Podcast On Hauted Hill, because obviously it's one of the best podcasts that's out there. It's one of the first ones I really got into, and it's always a thrill to get together and talk with. I'd love to have both of them come on sometime. Maybe we can make that work out sometime.
You never know.
But, never know. You never know. But I think Dan and I share the same movie spirit animal.
we do.
So we love so much of the same stuff. And he brought up 1987's fantasy sci-fi flick, Masters of the Universe, yo.
A canon movie.
It's a canon flick in every form or fashion. If you're not familiar with canon, oh, you are missing out on a boatload of crazy wackiness. It's like you don't know where it's going to go, but you're going to end up loving the movie, right? That's just kind of how canon rolls.
If you like ninjas, breakdancing, kung fu, sword, sorcery, exorcism, and a million other things thrown in, then go and just randomly select about 10 canon movies and you'll have a blast.
I was going to say, you just brought up the Ninja 3. And you just described Ninja 3. That whole thing right there. It's got all of it. Maybe we need to return for that one. How about that?
Ooh, I love that movie.
I do too. It's ridiculous. I think I've done that movie on every version of a podcast I've done so far because I love it so much. But we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about another canon masterpiece, if you want to call it that. Master of the Universe piece.
Oh.
Like I said, 1987, based on the cartoon, if you will. I don't know if you saw the making of kind of story. What was the Movies That Made Us or something about the 80s?
Well, there was the Toys That Made Us, wasn't
Toys
there?
That Made Us.
That was the one, I think. There is a Movies That Made Us as well, but they haven't. I don't think they're going to do this one.
But yeah, I mean, so the story is the entire franchise was based off action figures that they really didn't have a story for, so they had a guy go in and sell the idea and made up the story on the spot. So they basically had to run back and make up this story to match the action figures to have the cartoon. It's kind of like putting the cart before the horse. And we'll talk about that as we go along with this movie, but come on, man. Master Universe. I'll read the synopsis. It's pretty simple. When evil Skeletor finds a mysterious power called the Cosmic Key, that's a new one for you. He becomes nearly invincible. However, a courageous warrior, He-Man, locates inventor Gwildor, who created the key and has another version of it. And that just leads to a whole bunch of shenanigans.
Trouble. There's trouble on Earth. That's
trouble
what happens.
On Earth. You want to talk about this cast for a minute?
Yeah, well, obviously we've got the main man himself, Dolph Lundgren.
Right. I must break you.
I must break you. If he dies, he dies.
If he dies, he dies. It'd been awesome to have the movie and just repeat those lines through the whole thing, right?
He is awesome, Dolph Lundgren. In 1987, there was no one else really that could have probably played this role. Blonde, muscly. Yeah. This guy. On a side note, as you will know, Rick, and there's a lot of your listeners will, it's not just looks and a big body though. He holds several certificates in. He's a drummer for a start, isn't he? And
right.
like yourself, he does several martial arts. He's a very intelligent guy, speaks several languages. He was a model as well. There's literally nothing that Dolph Lundgren cannot do. And at one point, he was in a relationship with Grace Jones.
Yeah, that's right.
It's crazy.
Just to see them stand beside each other is awkward enough. So, but it's like, who's the real person in power here? Because I don't know anybody who wants to mess with Grace Jones.
I think it was Grace every time.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I mean, you talk about his list of do's and can't do's or whatever, but achievements. But she's the same way. I mean, it's like she did it all.
Yeah.
I mean, so yeah.
Perhaps more because she had a bit of a pop career as well, you know.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, she had several popular videos over here. So, yeah. How about Frank Langella, man?
Wow.
I love Frank Langella, man. Believe it or not, this is going to be a little controversial, but he's almost my favorite Dracula.
Yeah, I've heard that said quite a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Weirdly, this movie is Dolph Lundgren's least favorite role, or it was anyway for a long time. But it's Frank Langella's, and still is his favorite role out of all the movies he's made and all the awards he's won, because it pleased his children. Because they begged him to play Skeletor, who they were all playing with, you know, the toy. And he is awesome in this, and he sells it with that to me, the makeup is great.
Absolutely.
You know. I feel like when the Captain America movie came out, the Red Skull, that was, apart from maybe the nose being missing, they kind of based some of that makeup on this because, you know, it sells a skeletal face to you, and it looks great. But he can act through it, can't he, Rick? Yeah. Oh, boy.
And that's what's different, right? Because Skeletor normally doesn't have eyes or anything. So, yeah, it's different. And that's, you know, if we talk about the actual struggles this movie has, it's because if you relate it to the comic or the cartoon, then yeah, I can see where you would kind of go, this. I didn't grow up really with the cartoon. I was a little old for it. So, you know, I was already 12, 13, 14 when this stuff was coming out. So I was kind of past that phase. So I have no problems with any of this in the movie because it's like, I didn't know the folklore enough, you know, the canon, if you will, the canon movie, but so, yeah, I mean, his eyes do so much in this movie because that's really what he's got to show, right? And so it's awkward to see Skeletor have eyes, but as far as telling the story and the acting, it works great. I even said on the episode I recorded before was one of the standout things I think in this was for that time. That makeup's pretty incredible.
I agree for a canon movie as well, you know. And I feel, and I stand by this comment. I've said it in the past. He gives an almost Shakespearean performance.
Yes.
There's a line he uses which still gives me chills now, where he says, "Tell me about the loneliness of good, He-Man. Right. Is it equal to the loneliness of evil?" And the way he delivers that line in a movie based on toys, it's like, whoa, so good.
Oh, the writer was working on it that day, man. We got Meg Foster in this movie.
Wow.
Evil Lynn. I mean, yeah, I mean, she's in pretty much everything we love. I mean, we even messaged each other back and forth before this, and we were like, who doesn't love Meg Foster, right?
That's right.
Oh,
yeah.
So,
go on. Sorry.
No, I was just say she kind of steals the show here.
She's awesome in this, and I was 9 when this movie came out. So I'm just going back to what you said. It didn't bother me because I'm one of the biggest He-Man and the Masters Universe fans you'll ever meet, as you know. It's a big thing for me, and still is in some ways. But it didn't bother me that there was no Battle Cat. It didn't bother me that it took place on Earth. I hear all these people moaning about that, but to me, it was just so cool to see He-Man represented in live action when you're 9 or 10, you know. It's just, but Meg Foster, when I was scared of her in this, scared of Beastman as well, but I was scared of Meg Foster in this, and I always assumed those weren't her real eyes. And growing up and becoming a movie fan and watching every movie I've ever seen her in, man, those are her real eyes. They are the most beautiful / scariest eyes you'll ever see, I think.
They burn a hole right through you.
They do.
It's weird. I mean, they just do. And because I've got to meet her in real life too, and it has that effect because it looks so unnatural, you know. And super nice. She's a little space cadet now, but still very approachable.
I was going to ask you actually, on a side note, who from this cast have you met? So have you met any other of this cast?
Because I know that's the only person I've met is Meg Foster out of this group.
Meg. Okay, yeah. That's cool. That's a good one to meet.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And again, she's been in so much stuff. I mean, but I tell you, I sent you the message earlier. Her performance in Shrunken Heads really caught me by surprise because I really had no idea it was even her. For some reason,
Little Big Bow or something she plays, or in that.
Yeah, and of course she's got obviously contact lenses in, so she don't have her crazy eye color, and she's dressed in a different form and all this stuff. I tell you what, it's impressive because didn't know it was her.
Oh well. That's amazing.
Literally had to go back and watch it again and then pull up pictures to make sure. Yep, that's her. Wow.
Well, yeah, as I listened to that episode of your show, actually, I, funny enough, Googled the image because I haven't seen it. But I Googled.
You're better off just looking at the pictures.
Thanks. Well, as I said to you, you watch the movies, so we don't have to.
Right.
A lot of the time, anyway.
Oh. But yeah, Courtney Cox, right? After she got through Dancing with the Boss, Dancing in the Dark.
Yep.
We're going to be in Masters of the Universe.
Yeah, she plays Julie, the damsel in distress, and she gets blasted by Skeletor and gets a gross green slime on her leg. But yeah, she's so very young in this.
Yeah.
But my wife watched the last part of this with me because whenever I talk movies with somebody on a show, I always like to recap the movie, as we all do. And she said to me, why is she wearing that really strange nightgown that you'd find a 90-year-old woman wearing in the 30s? And then she runs out in the street in it as well. Very pretty girl, but I have no idea what that nightgown is about. But
somebody made that creative decision. No, she's going to wear this.
It would have been Golem, or someone would have come on the set with the cigar. I like her to wear this one.
Yeah, very wholesome.
We want everybody to think of her as girl next door.
Yeah, that's what every American girl wears, right? So, that kind of conversation had to happen because of who we're talking about. And again, folks, even if you watch this movie or not, you need to check out Electric Boogaloo.
The Wild Untold Story of Canon Films, the documentary. It's
unbelievable. Insane. Unbelievable. And this movie is just a drop in the bucket.
It really
of
is.
What this movie company did and just the outlandish money they spent. And decisions were made just like that. I mean, just and I highly recommend, if you like any kind of documentaries, that's just a top shelf one to me.
I agree. I've watched it several times.
Billy Barty. I grew up with Billy Barty.
Yeah, who doesn't love Billy Barty?
Saturday mornings, Sigmund the Sea Monster, all the Sid and Marty Krofft stuff. Did y'all have a lot of that stuff over there?
No, but I grew up with him because he was in Legend.
Yes.
He's in Willow. So when it came to little people and you needed someone who was a bit of a wizard in a gang of little people, he's the guy that got cast. Willow Afgood.
Right.
He's the guy that sends Willow on his mission. I can't remember who he plays in Legend. If he's in it, I know because I recognize his voice.
Yeah.
And then obviously he plays Gwildor in this, the Cosmic Key,
which is
Locksmith.
Almost the same character from Willow. I mean, from Legend. It's almost that same type of character, really. And again, it's the voice, right? Because nobody sounds like Billy Barty.
No.
But yeah, Saturday mornings there was a company called Sid and Marty Krofft, the Krofft Super Show.
Sounds awesome.
You ever heard of H.R. Puffin stuff?
Yes, I have indeed.
That was kind of the start of Sid and Marty Krofft. So it's basically a couple of dudes smoking a lot of pot, building a bunch of puppets, and recording it.
Amazing.
Say, hey, I got an idea for the show. How about we have a talking flute?
I think that was a lot of the kids programming in the 60s and 70s, and even then going into the early 80s. A lot of the shows I revisited from my childhood, I think, man, these guys are on some serious stuff when they came up with this.
Dude, there's a tree in H.R. Puffin stuff that looks like Jimi Hendrix. I mean, there's no doubt.
I know that tree. I've seen that tree.
There is no doubt these guys were puffing stuff, right?
I mean, it's in the name,
It's in
isn't
the
it?
name.
They weren't trying to hide it, really.
But there was Lidsville, there was Sigmund the Sea Monster, which he was the Sea Monster, which is, you don't see him. It's an outfit kind of thing. Yeah, man, he was my childhood. Did you ever see Night Patrol?
Night Patrol, I don't know.
It's a low budget kind of almost like trying to be a more seedy police academy kind of thing, right? Had Linda Blair in it.
Wow.
Billy Barty, a lot of people that were on the Gong Show, a lot of the hosts that were on the Gong Show.
Okay, I need to immediately seek this movie out and add it to my list.
He plays the police chief, so he's Linda Blair's boss, and he walks around and he farts all the time. And
you're selling it to me. So
exactly.
well.
I mean, it's such a bizarre bad movie, right? But
I mean, to be honest, you had me at a seedier police academy. You had me at that, to be honest with you.
And the jokes are kind of hit and miss because Linda Blair's name is Superman.
Oh my
Superman. Yeah, Superman. And then Billy Barty does this thing and says, look, Sue, I ain't got time for your crap tonight. She's like, oh, every time you say that, I get weak. And it was crap tonight.
That is amazing. I am here for that. That sounds like something I talked about to you a few days ago. The Naked Gun, those kind of jokes for me, they still land for me. I love all that kind of stuff. So I'll be checking that out for sure.
This is just on this side of that. It's got Andrew Dice Clay in it. I mean, it's such a bizarre lineup. It's all stand-up comedians from the 70s. And they just threw them together and made this really bizarre movie. I don't know if you know anything about the Gong Show, but it's all about
I know the Gong Show, yeah.
It's all about the unknown comic.
Yeah.
It's what this whole movie's about.
Okay.
Again, it's so strange, but yeah. If you can't find it, let me know. I'll get it for you.
Okay, I'll check it out, and I'll let you know. You'll be my go-to for Night Patrol if I can't find it.
So we've gotten way off base here.
Billy Barty plays Gwildor, guys. Sorry, I'll bring us back on track. And as we know, Rick, Gwildor was a replacement for famous sidekick to He-Man in the cartoons.
Right.
Orko, the magician, the legless magician who floated around and always dropped a pie on Man-at-Arms or did something ridiculous, and everybody laughed at him at the end, and he quite often did the moral. But as you can imagine, in 1986, when this was being shot, they didn't have any kind of a budget for a floating magician that could do magic. So they got rid of him and just brought in a little person, aka Billy Barty, put on some makeup and said, run around and... You're the Orko of this movie. Right.
And
I love
it. That's canon magic, folks. That's just what they do.
And do you know what? And you'll know that. I'm sure you know this, but Mattel, that made all the toys, they did a very small run of toys based off of this.
Yep.
So they did Blade, they did Saurod, and you could press a button and sparks come out, and they made a Gwildor. And Saurod was never a character. So two characters that canon came up with became canon in the Masters of the Universe, because they are now in all the cartoons, because the cartoons are still being made. Kevin Smith, and these guys that canon came up with are now in all of these movies and stuff. It's like, wow, someone made a decision and the snowball kept on rolling.
Well, and that's the thing, right? If you're looking hard enough, you're going to find the cool things that are in this, even if you're a fan of the original. So, and again, I think to my advantage, I just didn't grow up with it. I mean, I knew who He-Man was, and I knew he rode the Battle Cat and all that stuff. But you would rather Battle Cat not be in there instead of being in there and look crappy, right?
Yeah. Oh, hell yeah.
So that's kind of your choices, especially in this time frame, right? Because you didn't have any CGI stuff. I mean, it was still, it was a big deal for when they opened up the key and it does the little overhead vortex looking thing, right? That was a big deal.
I love that. So good. But yeah, I mean, that's an amazing effect, but it's all practical, obviously, apart from the lights,
Right.
And that's how they kept this movie cheap. They shot it that He-Man came to Earth.
Right,
There's only 2 minutes of them being on Planet Eternia at the beginning, because otherwise you'd have had to make a Star Wars movie on a whole other planet. And the cheapest way to do it come to Earth.
Yep, and that's, I tell you what, I even, again, you're referencing what I'd recorded before, and I said I think the problem this movie has, if you want to look at it as a problem, what kept it from being mega big, is the fact that this feels like it should have been the second movie, right? You almost do the Star Trek thing, right? Get it established, get it going, and then the third or fourth movie, then you come to Earth, you know?
Yeah. Because it's fun to see He-Man and Skeletor as a fish out of water, but you're right. It would have been great to see them
get the story developed first as an opening flick. Create that contrast between the two, and then you got something you can base it on where they're chasing each other through time. Just saying. I mean, I know they had to find a place where they could start it and end it. Just like when Lucas did the first Star Wars, he had this huge story and he had to find a starting spot and then a starting spot or ending spot. And that's what he went with. And I think that's probably how this came about. I said, I can imagine one day at work, the door gets kicked open and either Golan or Globus comes in, or maybe both of them, they go, "Boys, we found our Star Wars."
And he holds up a little toy figure and says, "This is the next Star Wars."
Right. So, again, the quality is always good. That's one thing I'll say about canon. May not be the greatest of movies, but the quality is always really good for what it is, right?
Yeah, they put 110% into everything they do.
That's why they went broke.
Yeah, I mean, this movie is one of the last few movies that broke the studio, really, isn't it?
Right. Yep.
You know, famously, they ran out of money. That's why the final fight scene between He-Man and Skeletor has got no background, because they had no background. They'd started dismantling the sets because they ran out of money. I think Superman 3 didn't help. I know Superman 4 didn't help. And like you said, over the top. And what was the other one? One of the last movies they made, and I'm sure you're going to touch on this, was Cyborg with Van Damme, which was actually supposed to be the sequel to this. But when this flopped, because no one was buying the toys anymore, because the toys, they came too late. They should have made this in the early 80s, not the late 80s.
Right.
And no one was into He-Man anymore. It was all the Transformers and whatever the next big thing was. So because this flopped, the script they had written, which was called Masters of the Universe, the Cyborg, they just said, well, we've built all these sets and we've got this script written. What should we do? Get this Belgian kickboxer in, Jean-Claude Van Damme, and we'll just move the script around a bit and we'll turn it into that. And that became Cyborg with Van Damme, which is, again, one of the last films that Cannon did. Crazy how these shifts. I love all this kind of stuff in the background, you know?
Yeah, that's the magic, again, of a company like this that just kind of, they don't really have a plan. They just kind of work it out as they go along. You know,
it does feel like that, doesn't it? They're like
whatever,
Hannibal Smith.
What other franchise whatever just falls in their lap, they're like, okay, let's go with this. You know.
Oh, a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. Okay, great. Yeah. Let's make that a Superman movie. Brilliant. What should we do?
Yeah, I mean, it's legendary, man. But pick some of your highlights here, man. What do you think really stands out? I mean, I know we can go on and on and on, because
of course,
there's some great dialogue scenes in this. I don't know. Just give me some of your favorite stuff.
I mean, one of my favorite characters was, and as I've grown up, it still is, Ludwig, the detective, who everybody will know as the principal from Back to the Future and a bunch of other movies, of course, as well. But he is really just this cop who gets dragged into this intergalactic battle, and he's got all the one-liners, but also doesn't have a clue what's happening. Just keeps. I think one of his best lines is, "Nobody takes pot shots at Ludwig." Just starts blasting his shotgun at Skeletor's henchman. He's a highlight for me. Absolutely.
Yeah, because he's that guy that doesn't believe anything's going on. He's one of those cops that feels like I've seen everything under the sun. You're not going to surprise me. I'm not buying this mess. And then he gets into a situation that obviously he's low man on the totem pole, but he's not going to take it lying down. He just pulls out the revolver and the shotgun, and just starts going to town, you know.
Like there's that one scene where he's in the music shop when they all arrive, He-Man, and you know, you got to imagine there's this big muscly blonde guy in essentially a piece of underwear. And he's there with a girl in a gimp outfit, Tila, and then her dad with a big moustache and loads of laser guns, and then a little guy who's kind of copying E.T.'s disguise. And they walk in, and he just goes, "Oh, it's a circus in town or something." It's just... But then, of course, Ricky, he puts in the work, and what happens to him in the end scene? He becomes the king.
Becomes the king. Yeah.
So you put the work in, guys, and you become the king.
He kind of pulls the old Flash Gordon ending, right? He's like, I think I'll stay around for a while.
There's a few things here that might keep me here.
Right. So yeah, I mean, and again, that again, if you're a fan of the original show, you're like, oh, wait a minute, He-Man's supposed to be the top king here. So, but I don't know. I think some of those twists just makes it so unique and makes it really fun, man. This movie is a lot of fun, and it holds up really well. If anything, I probably like it better now than I did when it came out.
Yeah, it's I think I appreciate it more now.
Sure.
Some of the effects, there's one or two effects that don't quite work anymore, but I, as with most of these films, and people like you and I, we overlook these things because we love the movie so much.
Right.
But you're right, it is a lot of fun. It doesn't really stop once it gets going. It's genuinely quite, for me anyway, when I watched this when I was about 9 or 10, it was quite scary at times, which I didn't expect. That scene in the school gymnasium with the Beast Man and all the guys come in, and he kind of picks that guy up, but it's not really mention whether the guy survives or not, but Beastman throws his guy across the room by his face. It's like, okay. And then there's that scary scene where Evil Lynn puts the collar on Kevin, and he's sort of speaking in a strange way because he's under some kind of spell. And I think that is another thing that I highlight for me is the effects. A lot of practical effects in this work. So are the makeups and everything.
Yeah. I mean, to even think 87, and you're going to make it to where Skeletor is floating on this ship that comes up beside the side of this huge building, in this uprise, and it still looks fantastic. And you're going, this is 87, and again, we know the company we're talking about here. So they pulled off some pretty amazing stuff with what they had. And again, I still think it just holds up so well, and it doesn't take you out of the movie like a lot of the movies do where the effects have kind of really dated. I don't know, man. These really hold up. It plays to what the story is, and I think that's what makes it acceptable.
And because it's based on a galaxy far, far away, if you will, you're willing to, if the laser looks a certain way or the laser whip looks a certain way, you just think, well, maybe that's just how it looks on that planet, whatever, it's fine.
You know what? I love the laser whip, man.
Yeah, it's cool.
Even now, just looking at it, I'm like, in the second Iron Man movie, if he would have had those whips instead of the electrical ones that he made, I'd been like, all right, we got some fire now.
Yeah, Tony Stark would have been doomed.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's cool.
Talking of Marvel, there's two things in this I've noticed that they did back in 87 that Marvel do now. One of them is the end credits sting, because guys, if you watch this movie, stick around and you'll see Skeletor pop up and say, "I'll be back," but he doesn't say it like Arnold. But he does say, "I'll be back," which is crazy because they were so sure that they were going to make the sequel. And obviously Marvel's known for its end credit scenes. But also there's a bit in this where, and Marvel like to do this, and a lot of movies do, and I think it is great. Some people complain it's too obvious, but they always do the bit where the girl stands up and she has her moment or something, and they've done it in a lot of the later Marvel movies. But there's a bit in this where Tila just kicks a few guys' asses and then sort of says something like, why would I leave it up to the men to do? And she takes over for a second, and then she looks at her dad, who's called Man-at-Arms, and just goes, "Woman at Arms."
Arms.
I kind of punched the air a little bit for that one. So I'm like, yeah, because Tila is a bit of a badass in this,
Oh yeah, I mean that's what's different too is you don't have a huge group. You've only got 3 or 4 people that are sent to Earth, and that's who's running from all of the soldiers and stuff that they send who are just as bad as stormtroopers. They can't hit anything. I mean, they're pretty terrible.
And they're terrible on those bloody hoverboard things.
Yeah.
That they stole from one of the Highlander movies.
Highlander 2.
Yeah, that's awful. Talking of Tila, I did have and still do have a very small crush on Chelsea Field that plays
Uh-oh.
Tila. She yeah, I was probably about the right age, and I just thought,
Sure.
I like her.
You know, that's that thing where the good looking, attractive, but they can handle themselves too, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, she beats everybody up, doesn't she?
Yeah.
She's brilliant.
She's tough. Oh, but yeah, man. It's an excellent revisit. I really enjoyed checking it out again, and you know, I had it on my list, but it was further down the list as far as what to get to. So when you brought it up, I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm in a mood for something like that. I mean, it gives you the Flash Gordon feels, right? Because
Oh,
it's
100%.
yeah, it's right there with the Flash Gordon flick. Even the way Dolph kind of looks versus Sam Jones. I mean, you even still got the same kind of feel going on.
Yeah, and although he's Swedish, he does give that, and I use quotation marks, but he's that all-American looking guy, the blonde hair, blue eyes, big muscly, just like Sam. And yeah, you're right. There is some comparison there, and then you've obviously got Ming and Skeletor, and
right. Yeah, I mean, so it's got that whole trope to it, but also it's just funny that towards the end of it, when Skeletor does get the power and he basically puts on like Dale's wedding dress to fight the final battle in. It's just like, when I saw that outfit, I was like, that looks like that could have been in Flash Gordon.
I was always confused as a kid as to what was happening there, because he says, I am more than a man, I am a god, and then he turns into what looks like a building or something, or a temple.
Yeah.
And it doesn't wear it for long.
Right.
He-Man wins. Spoiler alert, guys, He-Man wins. Just in case you're wondering. But yeah,
maybe the outfit change really hurt him. He might have had a good chance if he just stayed in the old the old cloth there.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you, because that looked quite cumbersome, that new outfit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you kind of get the Big Trouble in Little China final battle, the kind of thing going on with the swords and the lights. But again, it works, right? I mean,
it does. And that was the thing. One final thing I'll say, because I know we've talked a lot, but I noticed in this, they do that thing where that they do in Star Wars, Big Trouble in Little China, and lots of other movies, where when there's lasers or special effects, the good guys always have the blue explosions and lasers, and the bad guys always have the sort of the red ones, don't they? It's just the same in all the way through the 80s. It was just this thing. You knew who was hitting who, because the explosion of blue, it must have been a good guy.
Right. You have to make it clear to the young viewers of who's winning and who's losing, and we teach that a lot at work. Color coordination is, everybody's visual, right? Everybody learns and understands things more visually than they do just by basic comprehension. So, yeah, you have to clarify that stuff, right? So, yeah, that's another good point. I didn't even think about that, but you're exactly right, because I remember the reds being, from the bad guys. So
yeah. the blue lasers from the good guys.
Right, of course. But yeah, I mean, like you said, you got Courtney Cox ends up getting some kind of disease, some kind of space disease.
Skeletoritis, I call it.
Skeletoritis. Oh, I like that. And has to go back to the homeland and get a Masters of the Universe tetanus shot. That's the only thing that'll cure it.
And there is time travel in this, and it's a very fairy tale ending, isn't it, as well? Because to actually talk about the plot, because we haven't really, other than He-Man and Skeletor fighting, but her parents are actually dead. She's an orphan, and she's about to leave the town. But when she gets sent back to her, to Earth, Gwildor, and he gives a little wink, so I think he did it on purpose. He sends her back a little bit earlier, so that she can stop her parents from going and doing what I would call a John Denver, sadly.
Yeah, that's right.
And they went off in their private plane and they died. But she stops that from happening, and wow, it's just a happy time.
I like to think that while she's in the other universe, that's when Superman spins the world around. So when she comes back, it's just been rewound a little bit.
All the canon movies are related in some way.
It's all intertwined, right? Oh. Final thoughts, man. Show your love here.
Final thoughts. I have the power. No, it's it's silly. It's something for people that remember either the toys or the cartoons, or somebody even like yourself that didn't you know of it. Do you know what I mean? But I think even if you don't know those, and I don't know anybody that isn't aware of at least something to do with He-Man or Skeletor, like you've just said, it's a lot of fun because it doesn't take itself seriously. It's a fantasy movie along the lines of Kroll, Willow, these kind of movies, Flash Gordon, that we love to watch. And we talked off air. Sometimes you just need to escape from what's going on in the world. And this is the kind of movie that you can put on for 90 minutes and just laugh at, cheer at, and ultimately, the good guys are going to win. So you're quite happy and comfy. And I love it.
Yep.
Love it.
It's exactly what it is. It's escapism. You throw reality aside and just entertainment, right? And you can say that about a lot of canon films, because if you're looking for reality, you're not going to get it.
If you're looking for Chuck Norris, you're in the right place.
You're looking for Chuck Norris, yes. Oh, man. Oh, I tell you what, let's give this a rating, because I always do ratings on the show. We do 1 through 5. It's basically the thing. I stole it from Duncan, right? 3 means you like it, 4 means you really like it, and 5 means you love it, and then the other 2 is, to your discretion, right? So I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5, right?
Cool.
That's where it sets with me. I really like this one. So it's a great flick.
Yeah, and I agree. It deserves a 4 out of 5 because it's perfect, not perfect by any means, but as you knew I was going to give it, I'll give this a 5 just because it's one of my comfort blanket movies. And it's a rewatch and a rewatch and a rewatch for me. And it just reminds me of really good times and being a kid. And I've got a lot of love for this movie. And the more people I hear say horrible things about it, which isn't that much these days, but there was a period where it was cool to this movie, the more I defend it, the more I say no, but you don't get it. But now I'm just like, you know what, if you don't like this movie, you're missing out because this is cool. Yeah,
you're just hurting yourself, right? Because you're leaving out a great flick. If it's a standalone thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. So Dan also was with me with when I did what was before this show, which was Rad Movie Rama, and my most listened to episode was Mannequin, which was me and Dan. So Dan, Mannequin, Masters of the Universe, which one's higher?
Oh, Masters of the Universe.
Whoa, all right. Okay.
But what about if we combine them and it was He-Mannequin?
He-Mannequin. Oh, sure.
Of all the movies in the world we could have got together to talk about, we've talked about Mannequin and a canon movie based on toys. It's brilliant.
Again, that's why you and I connect, right? Because it's such a vast love of movies that is, let's just say it's dipped in 80s cheese, right?
Oh yeah, lots of cheese.
Pour it all over it, man. Extra cheese on mine, right? Awesome, man. I'm so glad you joined me for this. And like I said, folks, podcast on Haunted Hill. It's on Legion Network. I'm sure you guys are available everywhere you listen to pods.
We are indeed.
You got to listen to them, man. I'm telling you, you're missing out. Just like you're missing out on Master Universe, you're missing out on podcast on Haunted Hill. So you need to do yourself a favor and check that out. And check out my good buddy Dan. And also, you and RJ.
Indeed. Yeah, I got
that one up because that's new stuff.
Yeah, it's a newer show that I do with RJ, who is our mutual friend, RJ McCready, not his real name. And that show is called the Blame It on the Aliens podcast. And we cover conspiracy theories or urban legends. And basically, the point of the show is we will go into detail on these subjects, but we try to pin everything on the people in the sky that are watching us, the aliens.
Ooh.
There we go. Fantastic B-movie noise there. Well done.
Well, at least I'm good at something. All right. I can do that and I can go, helming. That's about it.
I love the helmet. I was going to ask if we were going to get one of those. I was going to ask.
So I remember one episode I did that and Danny's was like, was that you? I was like, yeah. He's like, well, that's pretty good.
It is very good.
Helming.
Love it. I love hearing it.
man, I appreciate you hanging out with me for this, man.
Appreciate you having me on. You know, it must get lonely driving up and down, being
does.
Doctor Movie. So I'm happy to be your Dom DeLuise whilst whilst we cannonball run along
My
the road.
Captain Chaos.
Dun dun dun.
Oh man. Yeah, man, that's awesome. You know, it's again, the solo thing works because of just the time frame, but it's always nice to get together and collaborate on stuff. So I appreciate you coming on. And again, we're obviously gonna do this again, right? Coming up real soon. So
I'll be back, like Skeletor says.
I'll be back. That's bad when you have to clarify which quote, right?
Yeah,
I'll be back, but it's not Arnold, right? All right, folks, that's going to do it for this episode. We will check you later.